Malcolm Hoenlein, shalom.
Shalom. It's good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming to our studio here in Jerusalem. First of all, a few words about New York, the primary elections, the results, very concerning. Surprising?
Actually, not surprised. So surprising as they are devastating. Those who have been following this closely knew the outcome of most of the elections. They were predetermined because of the nature of the campaigns. Mm-hmm. What is unfortunate in almost all the campaigns, Israel being anti-Israel was a fundamental platform. We have one candidate who openly celebrates October 7th now, not just then, but till now. We have others who ran on the fact that they would cut foreign aid to Israel, that they would cut arms sales to Israel, that even people who were supported by the community in the past now disavowed money from AIPAC or from AIPAC's new PAC. Mm-hmm. And the line in the sand has moved dramatically. And for us, it's a very red line. It's horrible things are being said about Jews, about Israel, and yet they win. But we have to know that many of these people are being elected with 10% of the vote. People do not come out, and they never vote in primaries. And in this case, there was even less incentive for some. There should have been more for others, mm-hmm. Especially in the Jewish community. It reminds us why every vote counts and why we're doing voter registration drives to get Jews to come out. But the actual vote, and people distort it. When you take Mamdani's victory as mayor, half the people didn't vote. So half that did vote, he only got half. Mm-hmm. So that's 25% of the vote. And when you extract the Jewish vote, it was much smaller than what people are talking about. And 70% of the young people, when asked, why did you vote for him, used one word, vibe. It has no definition. Vibe. Wasn't substance. It wasn't even affordability.
But is this the direction we're going? Can it get better? Because it seems to be getting worse and worse.
So it's a good question that the poisoning of the young people, which is a process of many years with a lot of foreign funding, hundreds of billions of dollars from Qatar, influence from Russia, Iran, China today being the major sponsor of the on-campus demonstrations, Qatar going to invest tens of billions in Hollywood after investing hundreds of billions on our campuses and in other institutions and investments to influence the public opinion. The poison that has been brought into the system, the educational system, starting from kindergartens where they sing in public school kindergartens, the wheels on the tank, not the wheels on the bus. Wow. And take children out to demonstrate against Israel in public schools.
When you say young people, it influences not only non-Jews, it's influencing the Jews as well.
That's a good point. You're right. But first of all, the general impact is very broad. And it's a process of decades. When I did my doctorate, there was a professor there who tried to get me out after he had removed the Israeli students because I answered him in class. And he even went to the Foreign Policy Institute, where I was working as Middle East specialist, and offered them a huge amount of money, and this is more than 50 years ago, wow. to get rid of me. So it's not a new thing, but it's grown over the years. It's become more professional. The growth of bots and other systems, using the internet, violating all the standards. Even in mail to the White House, we found one day where 80% of the messages came from foreign bots on Israel, related to Israel. And so we have to create bots, and we have to counter them, and we're creating capacity of that kind also to reach out to students. And we're finding, especially after October 7th, many young Jews who want to re-identify with the community, who want to stand up. They don't know how to. They themselves are not informed. We have not educated this generation. We have taken for granted that they would be pro-Israel. Birthright was important. Other programs were important. But the fact is that we're seeing a significant number of young people joining the hostile forces. Again, this has been true since biblical days, where we say our enemies come from within and the ones we have to watch. But this is more serious in the sense that of what we have seen over the last decades, because it's a deliberate program that began many years ago. And we found the papers where they talk about training 100,000 journalists and filmmakers, 100,000 Muslims.
It's a plan.
And 100,000 lawyers. And they train them how to get on a school board, how to get on a community board, how to get into city council, then how to run
And
for
that's
Congress.
what they're doing.
They're doing it.
That's
They're
what was
implementing
written,
it.
and that's what they're doing.
800 Muslims ran for office this year. Now, it's nothing wrong if it's a Muslim who's genuinely committed to Western civilization, Western values.
Exactly.
and
It's hard to
running.
explain to the world when you say that. Even when you started saying
Right.
that, there are too many Muslims. That's
I didn't
something
say
that
too
you can't.
many.
No, I'm saying you're
I
not
gave-
saying that.
I'm showing you the results.
That's
of
the question:
this
is how you create,
effort.
how you explain to the world the problem. Because again,
Right.
it sounds
without
like
becoming discriminatory, racist, or whatever, which
Exactly.
they say, and that is they hide behind that protection. Whereas what we're saying is it should be a single standard for everybody, and that comes to people who violate every standard of American justice, American system, American belief, Western society, and want to undermine it. And we should be doing it not because it's not specifically directed at Israel or Jews. It's because of what it means for America. Jews historically have always been the first victims. We're never the last. And we saw how every society that expelled their Jews, persecuted their Jews, ultimately collapsed over it. And we are at a point where we're seeing what happened in Europe 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, happening in America today. It's a global phenomenon. The number of anti-Semitic incidents around the world, but including in the United States, is at record numbers virtually every year. And more violent incidents included in that.
and we remember how it ended in Europe.
We
And that's the
remember
question.
well, and what has changed since 1945, I believe, is not that the world has changed. It's not a more caring place for Jews or others. Look at all the people who are persecuted around, Christians in Africa, Muslims in China, people all over the world who are being persecuted of every faith. And they only focus on Israel and create as if Gaza,
exactly.
and et cetera. I told them that in my speech at JNS that we shouldn't call them the occupied territories. We should call them the preoccupied territories, because the whole world is so preoccupied with this one thing. And yet you compare it by any standard, numbers, the violence, the purpose, it doesn't even come close to many of the other massacres that are taking place around the world, many of the hostile and war situations, many of the situations. And when Israel puts down its weapons, it's in danger. When the enemy puts down their weapons, there will be peace.
Now, we're used to it already, saying also that the world is against us, UN is against us, the media is against us, the mayor of New York is against us. But how are we supposed to look at President Trump today, at the White House? What are your feelings, first of all, about what we've gone through with Trump in the past week?
Well, it's obviously a concern. This is a president who has a very devoted following and who plays on the world scene an oversized role and fills the void because of the lack of leadership in so many other countries. And he's fundamentally committed to Israel, and I think to the U.S.-Israel relationship. It was demonstrated in the early months of this war and the ongoing, I think, conflict. But he's clearly subject to a lot of influences and influencers, both within and without of the administration. His view of people like Erdogan, with whom I've met many, many, many times. This is a guy who thinks he's Suleiman and certifiably questionable, let's say, in terms of his views, his
He
megalomaniac
said that
views.
he convinced him not to come into the war, basically not to attack Israel, probably.
Right. Again, to come into the war on the side of Iran. But Iran is actually an enemy of Turkey. One is Shiite, one is Sunni.
Exactly, it was very,
one is
very
they
awkward
have
statement.
been fighting each other and vying for power.
So we don't know exactly what
and they
he
are
meant there.
tied today and are creating. Turkey is a great concern to us. Turkey is today creating the mirror image of the Shiite ring of fire that Iran created. They are creating together with Qatar, taking over Syria, where they are a dominant force. Egypt and Turkey have been doing joint military exercises, and other countries are involved. So the president is I think does not have the right assessment of Shara and Jolani in Syria, and talking about these guys as strongmen. A, he's not so strong, and B, he's a terrorist who put on a suit. We haven't seen the change.
Let's go back to the war itself. What would you do if you were a president? Let's say he supports Israel from his heart, from his gut, everything. Zero support for this war.
No, he invested very heavily in this war. America was
He did.
deeply
I'm saying that at
involved,
this
and-
point, he had zero support already from all parts of the society of America.
Well, so there are Republicans, the majority of Republicans in Congress that still support the war. The problem is that the message of the war is being obfuscated and distorted and misrepresented by people talking about the fact that Bibi, drove this war, which is nothing could be further from the truth. Anybody who knows Trump knows that Bibi is not manipulating him, and just look at the events of these weeks, and you can see clearly that it's not the case. This was his assessment about the nuclear weapons. It's disappointing that we don't hear talk about the ballistic missiles being addressed and the proxy support system being addressed in the exchanges. Hopefully that will come in the next stages. And you never know with the president what he's really thinking. Is he really giving Iran a chance to hang itself and giving it enough cord, or does he really want to get past the midterm elections with lower oil prices and gas prices? Does he want to see the economy burgeoning and this issue put on a back shelf? He has enough time in 3 months till the election to do that, but the consequences, if we leave the Iranian situation and leave Iran, the mullahs in power who are there, except those eliminated, but their successors, that they will retain the ballistic missile and the capacity to build them, the capacity to enrich, even at a low level. You can't take away the knowledge, even though a lot of the scientists have been killed, which does help. But basically, they know how to do it. They still have the centrifuges. They still have the equipment. And you can be sure that the first opportunity they have to violate it, they will, because they know that there isn't a resolve in the West.
Some are saying in
to
Israel,
fight.
we hope that they violate soon.
Yeah, if in fact the world would rise up and punish them for it, but there's no evidence today that there's a stomach for it. That the Western European countries are by and large wimps. That they for their own interests, not for anything to do with Israel, not to do with the United States, but their own interests, because the ballistic missiles can reach Europe today. And Iran has demonstrated by going after Qatar and all the other, and Kuwait and UAE, Saudi Arabia, that even allies of theirs, that they will be willing to fire missiles and to attack them.
So what's the lesson, from what we went through? I mean, Trump was with us hand with hand, and we could be that soon Netanyahu will go visit him, and after 4 hours of a meeting, they'll be besties again. But what do we have to learn from what we experienced?
First of all, take nothing for granted. Second of all, that we have to be prepared to have the best equipment, to be self-sufficient to the degree possible, that Israel has to be able to defend itself by itself. I think perhaps it was a little premature to announce the cut in aid, because once you say that you want to phase it in over 10 years or 8 years, then the pressure builds to do it in 2 years and 3 years or 4 years. They're saying, if you're going to cut the aid, move it. And those forces that wanted to do it in the past but didn't have the votes, when Israel is saying, we can be independent and we can move towards and be partners, which is great, and be allies, great, and if not dependent on the United States, is great, but it's not a reality. I think militarily it'll take many years till you have the capacity to replace, production of some of the missile systems and others which are done by the United States. So I think we have to give the president a chance. I think we have to hold to account those who are making the statements that you mentioned, whether in the media or in government. I think we have to rebuild our ties and look anew at mobilization. I think we have to try to create a Doge that will review the activities of the existing Jewish entities that are spending well into the 9 figures and on anti-Semitism and on the rise of these forces. And we win some battles, but we're losing the war. It's time for us to hold to account, to say who's really doing things that are effective, which organizations are duplicating, by having forensic accountants and the major donors work together and call each of them in. And anybody who doesn't come in, should be cut off from funding, because there should be an open system, and we should see to it that we need the dollars. We have desperate situations. We have thousands of children in public schools, Jewish students, for whom life is becoming intolerable. There's one man started schools just for Jewish kids in his own money, spending tens of millions of his own money on Zucker schools. He has, I think, 10 already around the country, just to take Jewish kids out of public schools. The problem is we also have hundreds, in fact, maybe thousands of Jewish teachers who can't stay anymore. They're literally physically threatened and find it intolerable.
I want to go back to America in a moment, but just another question about the region. Abraham Accords. You've been there behind the scenes, sometimes confidentially, sometimes openly. What's going on with the Abraham Accords? Are they dead?
No. Well, I think that they're on life support in some places, and the prospect of expansion right now is probably more limited than it was before the war. I meet with the Arab
During the war, there was hope that that's exactly what will bring the next Abraham Accords.
exactly, and I will tell you that many of them are disappointed that they've told me this time and during the Lebanon war, decimate them. Don't listen to what we say publicly. You have to eliminate it. It's a
But
cancer.
that's important. You're
it
saying
metastasizes.
You're saying that the Gulf, the Arab states, said, "Don't listen to what we're saying publicly. Destroy them." If you can elaborate on that.
Yes, they're saying that we recognize this as a cancer, that Israel can defend itself. We can't. We don't have the capacity if they really turn on us.
So what does it mean? Don't listen to what we're saying on the media.
Well, first of all, if you listen to some of them in the beginning, were very good and very strong in their statements, and some were consistent, like UAE. Some were inconsistent, and some are very duplicitous in all this. They play all sides, for their own benefit and out of fear. But you've had courageous countries, Azerbaijan, others that stood up and on borders of Iran, have common borders with Iran, to stand up, and we should be supporting them and acknowledging them. So I think many countries, and ones that I spoke to beyond those that are involved, and Muslim countries beyond the region, who were prepared and are prepared to join in association with Israel. They look at the economic benefits, so I think it should start by doing joint projects. And when people see the results, that their water is clear, or that the post-harvest reclamation, that they are getting more food, that the benefits that Israel can bring to them, the diplomatic relations will follow. Instead, they spend 2 years negotiating a piece of paper that the next day isn't worth anything. There are many countries that are willing to join, and I think it can be expanded. The Mediterranean Initiative, in which we played a key role between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, and it took us years of going with Greek leaders to visit the countries and getting them to talk, because I always believed Israel should be in the Mediterranean, not in the Middle East, because it's a much more stable region. But there are many countries that came to me then, even some that would surprise you, to say, we want to be part of this. And many in Central Asia and going beyond Central Asia into Asia who want to be part of it. India, even Japan, even North Korea, South Korea, and others want to be part. And so you could build a linkage from Morocco all the way to the Pacific. And it counters the Belt and Road Initiative of China, which is threatening to the security of a lot of countries. It sort of builds a boulder against Russia's influence and expansion without being a threat to them.
So there's a big potential, but
there is a potential.
It's stalling.
It's stalled, but people don't understand how important that Israel is a small country. There are many countries in Africa that want relations now, that are prepared. Look at the changes in South America. It's a revolution. How many governments have changed in the last few months? That it's a different South America than before. So there are opportunities, and we have to help them exploit it.
Let's go back to America, and maybe on a personal note, we talked about anti-Semitism. We talked about identity. It's not the same America that you grew up in, that you follow, that you're part of the leadership there.
No, it's not the same America at all. Demographic changes are very dramatic. The attitudinal changes, especially what we see on campus. I always rejected comparisons to the period of the Shoah and the Holocaust, because I think it is a unique event, and we should not diminish it by comparing events. But I do look at the similarities between 1933 and today.
Wow.
When you see how political parties, Hitler was elected in an election, and the warnings that came before, and that those who were wise enough to see it and get out, and to already in concentration camps were operating in 1935, and Jews were being arrested and killed, that people have to have foresight. People have to understand that we need to mobilize all our resources. And the most important thing is that we have to be united, that we see too much disunity in the Jewish community, too much disunity here in Israel, which weakens the country and weakens its position abroad. And the ties between Israel and the United States, I think many more people are coming to appreciate the importance of Israel, especially after October 7th. I could tell you incredible stories about important people who never did anything Jewish, but afterwards called me up and said, I want to get involved, or I want to do something. And we started doing events for young leadership.
Wow.
And it's amazing. There's a real revolution that should be exploited. It's not being nurtured enough. And as I said, we have to be more, I would say, aggressive in our fight against anti-Semitism, but in smart ways. We have to pick our targets. I for one, don't talk about Mamdani because I think he likes it when we attack him and criticize him. I think we should ignore him and work against him. And the biggest thing we can do is to register voters and Jews and non-Jews who will vote against him.
So that's about strengthening the Jewish
and our
the Jewish
institutions
side.
and investing in Jewish education, which is always critical, and see that more money that is directed often to general purposes get directed to Jewish purposes, and that we educate young people. Our young people don't know. They can't tell you who the first prime minister of Israel. When we poll people who yell river to the sea, 80 to 90% don't know what river and don't know what sea. But I'm telling you, amongst young Jews, many of them don't know how to answer.
So this is my last question. We're talking about strengthening, basically. To reach these results, you have to strengthen the community. Some are saying it's time to leave. Time to leave to Florida, or mainly to leave to Israel.
Well, they are moving. We see the demographic, hundreds of thousands leaving New York, people moving to places like Kentucky and Tennessee, Jews, and North Carolina. So you have resurgence of, small Jewish communities
But regarding
who were smaller before. I think many will consider Aliyah, and I told this to leaders in Israel a month after October 7th, that they should build affordable housing now, because young Jews from Europe will come because they have to, and Jews from America will come because they want to. And even if they retain a house in their home country, but more and more would start doing business, would have their kids at least have greater affiliation and closer association come. So I think there's great potential for Aliyah. It has to be made practical and affordable. At the same time, we have to make sure that Israelis who are living on the margin can get their adequate needs fulfilled. I understand it's a small country and the great demands on the budget, so all of us have to contribute. We have to get more money invested and more successful high tech, which yields the best birth rate in amongst developing countries, the strong shekel, which hurts all of us because those of us who have bought apartments and things are trying to pay for them now pay 20% or 30% more.
Wow.
But those are all good challenges.
Okay, Malcolm Hoenlein, we're looking forward to your next visit here in Israel. Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure. It's always good to be with you.